Meeting to order. The first thing I will ask for is approval of the minutes from our meeting on January 17th. I'm gonna slide over here and is this better?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you, Ann.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can just barely hear you. Maybe if I turn up my speakers.
Is he talking through the computer?
It's her volume.
Let me, if I just call her on the phone.
Yeah, I
Ann,
wonder
Ann.
if that might be an easier.
Ann, I'm gonna call your cell phone, okay?
You're gonna call my cell phone?
Yeah. Is that okay?
I'm at home. I'm on the Zoom call at this point.
Yeah, but we're thinking maybe if we call you on your cell, it might be sound a little better.
Oh, so go off the Zoom call?
Yeah, Joe's just gonna call you on your cell and we'll put you on speaker.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, Ann.
You sound very loud and you're fine.
It's that Murphy.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this microphone.
Okay.
Unless you wanna just like, maybe, like, Jay, you wanna try just talking into this? And
But the
she's-
problem is gonna
Yeah,
be
then she
if
won't be
we,
able to hear
if
everybody
we have a
else.
discussion.
If
Yeah.
we turn off Zoom, Ann, and Joe is able to call you on your phone, perhaps we can pass the phone around the table for when anybody, has remarks for contributing to the conversation, we can have the phone in front of us so that you can hear. And I wonder if it's a low-tech solution.
Sure.
Listen,
It's a
sounds
good
practical to me.
Okay. So
Alright.
perhaps let's just turn the Zoom off and we'll just play kind of phone, past the cell phone. Just thinking of the quickest.
I'll invite my friend Murphy, you can pass the phone.
Yes,
Leave it
right.
there and see if it works.
Joe,
Hi, Ann, how are you?
where are you?
I am, sitting in this meeting right now. I'm actually sitting where you sit.
Yes.
And I've got you on speaker.
Oh, okay. I thought you were having trouble calling in or something. I don't know.
No, I'm here.
Hi, Ann, and this is Anna. I'm sitting right next to Joe. So we'll try to,
We'll aim the phone.
we'll aim the phone and, we're sitting, in our typical semicircle arrangement. So as folks in the room have, contributions to make to the conversation, we'll put Joe's phone in front of them so that you can hear loud and clear, okay?
That sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll try this again. Ann, can you hear me okay? So we.
I can indeed.
Perfect, then we may not have to move the phone as much as we think. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order, and I will ask for approval of the minutes of our meeting from January 17th.
I'll motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any changes to the minutes? All right, we have our minutes approved. I want to take us back to our last meeting where we did discuss our local labor policy, and specifically what we were talking about were getting more specificity on, from the applicants when warranty and specialized local labor exemptions were requested. And to be more tangible about those, right now, we get a warranty item, but we don't know what it is that's driving that warranty. Does the installer, are they certified by the manufacturer? Do they have a certain skill set? Whatever that is driving the warranty issue, we would like to get specificity with the goal that it gives our local labor community the best opportunity to actually get those certifications or maybe certified by the manufacturer in order to be able to handle this. And similar thing for specialty construction. If somebody comes in and says this is a specialty construction, we'd like to get more specificity on what exactly is it that makes this specialized. Are the installers certified by a independent body, and that is required? Is it experience? What exactly is it? Once again, with the idea that it would give our local labor folks to, an opportunity to actually get that training or get that certification. And Troy brought up an example that, they can actually put together a strike force pretty quickly if they know exactly what is required for this, for the particular skill set. And so that is really, the idea is to update the local labor policy to reflect that. And so did I get anything incorrect, or did I leave anything out? Just wanted to recap where we were, my recollection of where we were last time. Or anyone have anything to add?
So, just for clarity, so if I'm gonna buy something, I'm gonna buy whatever it is, a conveyor belt, whatever it is, a piece of manufacturing equipment, and they're saying it's proprietary and I need them to install it. Are we saying to them, prove to us that that's the case?
No, so what we get right now, Joe, is, okay, you buy a train equipment, train HVAC unit.
Right.
And someone will say, we get from the applicant, well, I need to have so-and-so install this, or train will no longer honor my warranty. Very legitimate. What we'd like to know is, what is that? Is that because those individuals have been certified by Train to be installers? Is it that Train themselves has to come and install it? Those are two very different things. For instance, if Train, the manufacturer, says, no, we're the only ones that can install it, then we'd like to know that, because then there's very little we can do.
Yeah.
But if they say, no, you need to have attended the Train installation class, then what that gives us an opportunity to do is raise our hands and say,
All right, we'll
all
send
right,
somebody.
yeah, we'll have, or,
Right.
yeah. And matter of fact, Troy mentioned a lot of times, they can get enough people that Train will come out here and
Yeah.
actually conduct a class.
Right.
So, right now, we don't know which one of those things.
And I think, and Rachel, maybe this is a question for you. So to your example, it's ironic you use that example. So when we buy HVAC equipment, I have full-time HVAC people that work for me. So and in the past, if we were gonna put a certain rooftop unit in, HVAC contractors would say to me, well, if you install it, you don't get the warranty. Well, I reached out to manufacturer, and he said, well, is your HVAC guy certified? Is he licensed? I said, he is. Well, then, he said, then.
Bingo.
So, I guess Rachel, if we say that, again, back to my example. So let's say I'm building a manufacturing plant, and there's a piece of equipment that I bought, and the distributor, maybe the distributor says, he's not just a distributor, maybe he's a subcontractor that also installs them for this certain thing. And he says, well, we have to install this piece because it's proprietary and you lose the warranty. I would like the manufacturer to say that, because the only way that really holds water to me is if Rhett manufactures it, but Jay's the contractor, it's in his best interest to tell me he has to install it.
Of course.
But I really would like something in writing from Rhett saying, yeah, it's true. You need Jay to install it or there is no warranty. And I think in that situation, it puts us in a bad spot. If Rhett says, that's not true. Jay had certain training which we can provide to anybody. Or maybe it's just a licensed contractor, like in my case. So I'll give you a little bit more food for thought. So I own a retail center. We're putting rooftop units in. I was buying Carrier rooftop units. And at the time, the distributor said to me, well, you got to use this contractor to install them or Carrier doesn't warranty it. Well, I reached out to Carrier, send my guys licenses, and Carrier goes, Joe, you can buy as many as you want and we're going to warranty them. And, we've probably put 6 of
That's
them
it.
on since then.
That's exactly the point. And
Right.
because right
Right?
now, we are not getting that information. What we are getting is warranty.
Correct.
And what we are now, want to modify our local labor policy to say is the applicant needs to provide us, and from the manufacturer.
Correct.
What is it that,
Right.
that the manufacturer requires to maintain that warranty.
So are
Okay,
we
so
conti-
here's what the local labor policy says. A copy of the equipment warranty confirming the use of specific installers must be provided. So Brian gets that at a minimum, right? This is just a general statement of what's required. Brian gets that. We look at the language of the warranty. Why don't we have
Yeah,
Brian walk
yeah.
us through exactly what he does, so
Well,
we
before,
know.
before
Yeah.
we go into, I just want to add, there's another, that's a great analogy, but there's another analogy that we've been dealing with. And the one, the fresh one, is the pallet rack storage setup, where this installer is the manufacturer and they need qualified installation crews that are certified to install this. And we all know the question was, what's the spec? What's the problem? And it was, the paint might get scratched. That'll null the warranty. The floor, the epoxy floor, the installer, the company that applied the floor, they owned the patent to the epoxy.
Yeah.
So what we were trying to do, if you remember back in the day, was trying to get an ANSI credited number. What is the spec of this procedure? And when I came to our painter here locally, he was like, here's the equivalent spec for our local contractor to install. But because we had a installer manufacturer, that's where we're getting the ravel up. It's not, I love the analogy of a manufacturer, but it's when the manufacturer wants to take the product
And install it.
and install it. Same thing is happening at Life Cycle with the tanks. Same thing with the bolted up tanks. They manufactured them down
they
in
install 'em.
Texas. They're gonna ship them, they're gonna unload them, they're gonna bolt them up, they're gonna warranty it.
And
It's like they got a monopoly on the process.
so I think in that situation, they almost back you in a corner. So if I would have called Carrier and Carrier says, hey, we install them, you want my product? That's it. So at that point, now I either have to go and buy a York, right? Like kind, and have my guy install it. But if I want that Carrier and Carrier,
Right.
they back you into a corner, and I don't think we really have anywhere to go with that. If that,
That's exactly right. Joe.
because
And those
that's
are-
a free market system. I mean, that's
Those
just,
are two different,
right?
but all we're trying to do is get clarity. If the
Right.
manufacturer is saying, hey, as part of what we do is we manufacture it and
And
we
install.
install it, and the only way you get our warranty is if we install it, and that is what comes from a written form, then, you're right, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
But there are probably other instances where it's looser.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know what those are, just so we can.
And think about this, guys. If, for example, so let's say that epoxy floor, this situation, they're gonna put this epoxy floor in, the guy that manufactures the epoxy floor installs the epoxy floor. So unless I think in that situation, well, why do you have to have this epoxy floor? Is there, and you don't wanna make it overly complicated, but what if we said, hey, if you're gonna install this epoxy floor, why do you have to have this one? And if you could show us why you need this one above anyone else, then by all means, buy it, and you gotta let the free market system work, and whoever manufacturer installs it. But if there's an epoxy that will do the same thing, the local labor can install with a similar warranty and accomplish the same thing,
But
then,
I think we're getting away from our mission statement.
We can't get
because
into
we-
that kind of conversation.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
trying to support not only, so let's say our local contractor buys from our local vendor, not only is the local contractor and the construction workers gonna receive and be a part of the incentive, but you're also gonna give the providers, the vendors, the wholesale houses locally. So if we're gonna follow our mission statement, it needs to go through the whole, especially on an epoxy floor, because the pushback from Oregon Free Dried, and there was another one, was this is food service. When I was like, yeah, Rochester, food service. We want to talk about food service. We've been doing food service, and we have animals in this marketplace, and we have the local contractors that work daily with all of our food people. So that's when I got to sit back and say, wait a minute, and then it's unfair to say I'm going to I'm gonna go A to Z and I'm gonna monopolize my product. That's fine in the market if you're gonna go out in private, public, but when you come to COMIDA to get incentive, there should be an exhausted effort. Is this something in Rochester that can be provided? To incorporate more involvement on the incentive, more parties get a piece of that pie. That what I think is where I like to stay focused. I get on the big manufacturing sides of HVAC equipment. Funny you're using that analogy because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
But when I go into my other board and I report that this is a waiver and this is the reason, the response is, so-and-so does that right here in Rochester, and they've been here for 60 years. Okay, well then, understand that. Did they get an opportunity to bid? And then we go to the next level of warranty is price, right? Because we're gonna end up getting to this price warranty issue because they're gonna find another way to beat us, and we all know that's what it is. It's the almighty dollar. That's the end game. And I don't, in capitalism world, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, right? It's business. But when you start using taxpayer money locally, we gotta put more teeth to exhaust our resources. That's all I'm asking is, did we exhaust our resources? Were we given an opportunity? Because my fear is, Joe, when these construction projects have that warranty, the discussion in the previous, Jay, you've been here the longest, and Brian, the whole goal was to get local folks certified in this different silo.
Right.
Just, it makes sense to me because it's a cost savings. You don't have to ship anybody in. You don't have to put them up for the night. You don't have to pay for gas. You don't have to pay. It's a cost savings. And then when we started to entertain the apprenticeship language, we doubled that cost savings. Not only are we gonna keep it local, but we're gonna give you a discount if you train an apprentice in
Yeah.
hopes that that apprentice can take that certificate for as long as he keeps continuity or she keeps continuity of that certificate.
Yeah.
The elevator at Oregon was on the loading docks. We do that all the time. That's something here that we would have done all the time, but it was a product that Oregon Freeze Dried had a relationship and they didn't want to hire local. It didn't save them any money. Those elevator guys around the country, it's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
That's all I think I wanted to focus on.
No,
was-
and I think that's, and I know Rhett's got a question, but there's two parts to that. I think the part that I'd like to focus on is we want to make sure that we give our local labor the opportunity and that they're given a fair shake. And I think that is the spirit, what we want to capture here is that whatever it is, like we can't do anything about a manufacturer that decides that, hey, we're going to manufacture and we're going to install. That is completely up to them, and if that's what they want to do, then we are, then so be it. But what we want to avoid is the manufacturer, and I'll use the example that Joe brought up, that the manufacturer just wants someone who's qualified.
Right.
And want to get to what is that
What's the
qualification.
qualification? Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Brett?
All right, so before I ask my question about people applying, based on what you're talking about, not only does it help the local community, but the more people that we have trained in these specialty items, they can go outside of this area if needed, because they have the training. So my question is, when somebody applies for incentives to COMIDA, do we know up front the manufacturers? I'm gonna guess we don't ask
No, of
that.
course
So-
not.
So would that be a wise thing to incorporate, or is that a lot of extra work? I'm just thinking to be
This
proactive.
is gonna, okay. How do I say this? We are economic development professionals, attorneys. We're going into an area that none of us have qualifications to be in.
Right. I want
I'm
to,
sorry, state the question again?
I'm just wondering, in the application process, or whatever step that is, maybe it's a local contractor, I'm just thinking out loud, and I don't know anything about this, but if we knew who the manufacturers were that were gonna be used, we don't have to go through the contractor or whoever else, the installer. We could make those phone calls up front. We could, you know, and it would speed the process. I'm just thinking.
Yeah,
I think we push it on to the applicant, you know, ultimately to provide us.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm
with-
saying.
With the justification, and maybe, Joe, hold on, maybe Brian, you can, if you could just walk us through what a week in the life is.
Oh, God, we need more time.
But the
I can- yeah, I
manufacturer's
can
not
add it.
included in that. We don't get names of manufacturers when somebody applies. I'm
No,
guessing.
no.
I think what you're referring to, from my point of view, is much more in the world of the specialized construction point of view or the criteria that we use. As it relates to the warranties, the vast majority of them are the manufacturer type examples.
Where the manufacturer
Installs.
is the exclusive installer.
Yes, and it's because so many times now, you're buying a package.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
not just buying a piece of equipment or
Right.
whatever, you're buying a package. So, from the point of view of what you're saying, I agree with everything that you're saying, but I think the vast majority, from a warranty point of view, I think the vast majority of them are manufacturer issues.
Can I push on that a little bit?
Yeah.
So, when you, I'm the applicant, I tell you, I gotta, you know, I have, you know, something being installed, and the manufacturer's telling me, you know, I need to use certain installers.
Yep.
Tell me what happens then. I mean, do
So-
we verify that with the manufacturer? Or is it, because there's a difference between the manufacturer saying, no, we need to install our own product, versus someone saying, no, you need to use certified installers.
Yeah, for
It-
sure.
It's the second part that I'm more interested in.
Usually, it's a combination of both of what you're explaining, is that, number one, it's a manufacturer, and number two, usually they have their own approved installers who have been through their training programs that are linked.
Right,
So what I do is I'll get a copy of the actual warranty,
okay,
okay? And it comes from the manufacturer, 98% of the time.
Sure, sure.
So it's a manufacturer warranty that requires them to use their folks and whatever they've done to get their folks certified.
Right.
We don't push it that far. Essentially, sometimes we do, and if I talk to Troy and Troy says, you know, we got people here who can do that, or who have the certifications, I might ask what the certification is. So perhaps it's a good idea for us to build into the language
Do-
what their certified installers
Do we,
have.
do we get that, where in the sense of, like, does the warranty say that we, the manufacturer, must install it? If that is the language, then it's cut and dry, in my mind, right?
It's always the language
Right,
for us
right.
to approve it.
Right, but then if they say, or certified installers, that's where,
Right.
because that to me isn't the manufacturer anymore. That can be Joe Alaco contracting, it could be Rhett contracting. That's what,
That's
what,
correct.
I'm sorry?
That's correct, I agree with you.
Yeah, so that second one is really where I want to get to, because that second one, if we know that, that's when I want to be able to flag that to Troy, or to the board in general, so that we can do our reach, you know, and say, yeah, they're going to install Acme, you know, HVAC equipment. Can we get certified to work on Acme equipment?
Yeah.
And if we can do a strike force, I don't want to grant that warranty right, or that exemption right away until we've had the opportunity to at least say, can we do something? If Acme says, no, you got to have people from Acme, that one's cut and dry.
Yeah.
Brian, can
it-
you share any recent examples of where, or certified installer has been an instance?
I don't think I've seen that under the warranty classification.
Okay.
It's always a manufacturer's warranty that says you have to use our certified installers to do this.
So
But
when
that
you-
would be nice
what-
to
what-
know.
But Brian,
Those
when you-
installers could be, you know, with our own local organizations, if they've been certified by that particular manufacturer. And generally,
Yeah.
there's training available. My years in communications
So could you
coming
share
in,
with the
but,
board, do you always
the,
get the
Cisco,
certificate
for example,
when asked for it? Do you always
if they
get that?
wanted only Cisco
That's what they need to
trained
hear.
techs to install their equipment, well, you know, would it behooved us to have as many installers certified to be Cisco technicians?
Yeah.
And, you know, we paid for that extra training, but I mean,
Sure.
it wasn't something you were gonna change Cisco's mind on.
Yeah.
It's just, if you want to install their equipment, you gotta be trained on it, you
Yeah.
gotta know
Yeah.
how to do it.
So
But-
I think
but-
to simplify it, if we look at this and we say, okay, like, almost like you're checking boxes, right? So if they come to us and say, all right, here's the piece of equipment that we're gonna buy. And that piece of equipment, the manufacturer has to install it. There's no certifications, there's no nothing. We produce it, we install it, they're our people, they work for us. I think it leaves you nowhere to go. If they install it, if they produce it and say, here's our certified contractors that we need to install it. If they don't install it, we don't have a warranty. I think you could dig into that, to Troy's point, and say, okay, can we get people certified? Can you approve, Mr. Manufacturer, can you approve A, B, C, and D in Rochester to install it? If they say no, then again, you have nowhere to go.
That's a different story.
Right, but if they say yes, at least you go down that road. And then the last piece, what I was trying to get at with the epoxy floor, depending on what it is. So back to my HVAC analogy. If I bring a project to COMIDA and I'm gonna put HVAC units on the roof of this building I'm building. And back to the distributor saying, hey, I want you to use, Van Hook to install them. If you don't, you avoid the warranty. Well, now let's say that the manufacturer tells me, no, Joe, your guy can't install it. You have to use Van Hook. Well, why do I need to use Carrier? I could use a York, which is same size, same everything, does the same thing, and I could have Troy, who's local, install it. So in my mind, whoever comes to you and you deal with them and they say, and Rachel, I don't know if we can draft it this way, but if they say, we build it, we install it, you got nowhere to go. We build it, we have contractors that are certified, can we have somebody in Rochester install it? That's it. And this, is this the only item that you can buy in this price range to accomplish what you want to accomplish? So in my mind, it would be 3 boxes, right? And if none of that works, well then you gotta let them install it and it is what it is. But at least
I don't wanna-
you exhausted.
I don't want to open that third box. I don't think that's our place. That is up to what the applicant, if the applicant wants to use Carrier, they can use Carrier. And if Carrier says, no, we're not gonna, certify anyone in Rochester, which I can't imagine that they would. I think we can push on it with Carrier, but I am uncomfortable going back to the applicant and saying, hey, would you consider York? That's,
I don't think we do that. I don't think you say that to
I don't
them.
even think we open that door,
I don't think you say to them or make a suggestion to them.
I don't think that's our place to do that. And I am very reluctant, because you understand your needs, you can look and say, Carrier,
Yeah.
If my guys can't install, if my folks can't install it, I'm gonna go to York. That's a door we on this board should not be opening. It should really be the first two. If the manufacturer is gonna say, people on our payroll, they're the ones that come out, they travel all across the
That's it.
country, I got my crew, that's an easy one. But, and the subtleties are really important here, Brian. If they say, no, you have to use one of our certified installers, then it becomes, all right, what does it take to get certified? That door should be, that requires more, okay? Who are the certified installers? And what does it take to get certified? And I will bet you more often than not, we fall into the second bucket because a lot of manufacturers don't want to deal with having people all around the country. They want to bring people in to train them, and then they want to be able to say, okay, if you're in Boise, Idaho, here's who you go to, and if you're in Rochester, New York, it is in their interest to have more certified people all across the country, as long as people are willing to pay and get trained. And if we're willing to pay and get trained, that's the opportunity we want. Because it's not only the installation, then it becomes the warranty work. Then there's a huge,
Yeah, and if one person buys it, odds are somebody else is gonna buy the same thing down the road.
yeah, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think what it is.
It is subtle, but it's key.
Adding another step that says, okay, if you do have your preferred or your approved vendors, what is the specialization that they have that allows them to be your
That's
preferred
it.
vendor? Or what certificate do they have? Because to Troy's point, there have been times when it's been pretty cut and dry, right? There's nothing we can do. We're gonna have to allow them to use their installers. But there have been instances where we've asked that question and we don't always get the answer. So I think
So,
maybe our requirement is for that.
And that should be
in
on the
narrative
applicant.
Of the warranty.
So they don't
So, Rachel, how
respond,
do
and
we
it
do
pushes
that?
that 45 days, and now he's getting pressured. They're
Right.
anxious to get the job through.
Yeah.
And it becomes, but
We'll
this
get
is
to
a
that.
play. This is
Yeah.
a play that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I want to first get this decided, and then we can start to move to the yeah, I understand the hand waving that goes on.
So,
But-
so Rachel, is there a way to draft it? Because at the end of the day, that's what you do. So
Yeah.
is there a way to draft it so that it's clear that if Brian says, hey, I want to know, why do you have to install it? Can you show me why? They need to prove that to him.
Right. So the way that it's written now, we just ask for the copy of the warranty confirming the use of specific installers. I think we have to take it one step further and we need to see the certifications. What makes those individuals the certified installers? We have to
Right.
know that. I wanna leave the statements in our policy general enough so that we can be flexible and agile. If we get too specific, then we've pigeonholed ourselves and we
Right.
don't wanna do that. We
No,
wanna
but
be
what we are looking for from the applicant is that if they say certified installers, we want to know what that certification is. That certification can be from the manufacturer. We've been Cisco trained, we've been Carrier trained, we've been.
Whatever, right.
Whatever it is. We want to know that, because what that does is it opens the door. It says that you're not requiring Cisco employees, you're not requiring Carrier employees to come in and install it.
Right. I will say this, I think that we also have to provide some certainty on our end, right? If we're gonna ask our applicants to do these things, and I understand they're getting benefits, but if we have policies that leave too much discretion to us, that's a problem too, right? People will come to us and say, oh, I don't know what they're gonna do, are they gonna hold up my construction? So when Brian says to them, I need to see your certifications, he looks at them. I think when Brian goes back, and if we have people locally with the requisite certifications, we have to be specific. We have to say, these various entities have the required certification.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We have to go back with something. We can't just say, oh, well, locally, we could get this done, and it's on you to figure out how.
So then I think you
It's
gotta
not,
work.
it's not on the applicant to figure out how.
Right.
The reason we are asking for this certification is to give our local labor the opportunity to say, and let's say it's 45 days, they should provide this with 45 days. If they don't provide it, the 45-day clock should start when we have.
Once we receive their documentation,
Once
the clock starts.
complete.
Yeah, complete, yes.
Complete,
Yes.
not,
There you go.
Yeah, that's the key.
And that's some of the problem we're
That's,
having.
right,
that's the key.
right. That's when the
That would help.
45-day
Yeah.
clock starts. So if the 45-day clock starts when it is complete, that at least gives us the opportunity, and I'm asking Troy, 45 days in advance, can we reasonably say, we can get someone certified so we can bid on this? Because typically the bidding window is 2 to 3 weeks, right?
Right.
So 45 days, it gives you roughly 3 weeks to be able to mobilize and try and get that. If we can't, then we grant the,
Well, so the other thing I want to add on is sometimes, back to the 45 days, gets into my craw when we ask, and Ann asks that question. Are you aware of our local labor policy, 45 days in advance? Do you anticipate any waivers at this time? That opens the door for at this time. Because what gets to me is, now I got 5 waivers, and they stood in front of the board, and they said, we don't anticipate any waivers for local labor. Now I'm dealing with Brian, he's calling me, he's got 5 on the project. And to your point, Joe, they knew this. They knew this, but because the question was, do you anticipate any local waivers at this time? There's your loophole. So you just bought them their free ticket, they get out of jail free, if you call it. That needs to be worked on, in my opinion, because if you notice me, I document that Ann asked that question every project. And then when it comes to a waiver, I go back and I go, wait a minute, we asked them, they agreed, then now what's changed? Because now I have 5 waivers or 3 waivers, and they knew this. They knew it. And then the loopholes start, and that's hard for me.
So how do we change that and not scare people off?
Well,
I-
then the 45 days might have to go, to Jay's point, meetings ago, maybe 45 days isn't enough. But if they do something like that and aren't honest with us at the board meeting when we put our vote to it, then I think the clock should extend to give Brian and local a fair shake, because by the time everything happens, the delays, the rhetoric, and then it's just like, for naught.
So 2 things. I will take the applicants at their word that they probably are not into the weeds enough
At that time.
that they would know. Because let's take an applicant who's, building a food processing plant or whatever. But, at some point, they might hire a CM or a contractor who comes in and says, hey, I need to do this. So,
Yeah, but I look at this, Jay,
But,
I
just-
look at
ju-
the incentives.
just hear me out, Troy.
I look at the incentives as a budget. And they get the incentives, and we had this conversation one of my first years on this board. They look at it as a budget. When they come to the board, you go for the max. If you hit the max or you beat the max, your incentive equals accordingly, right? So if it's budgeted, and they come to the board with a number, and Joe, you're gonna be a part of this conversation because you do this on a daily basis. You budget, and then what is your team's job? Beat the budget. Come under budget, right?
Or at least meet it. I'd
Or,
be happy if they
you know
meet
what, you know what I'm
Beat
saying?
it, I've never seen it, but if they meet it, I'm dancing around.
That's where I get caught up, Jay, because they come here, the project's got a number of $7 million. Now they're gonna try to beat that to be a successful business, which is what we're supposed to be doing. But I look at the incentive as a budget. And then when that budget starts to get local contractors and local labor peeled away from it.
and we're trying to avoid that, Troy, but I also don't feel like they're incorrectly answering they may just not know. So the question that I have is, right now, Brian, have we gotten pushback at all on the 45 days? Or when the applicants have come in, has the 45-day been
Not an application, we don't have a problem, no?
if we went to 60 days?
I don't wanna slow down to, it's just like we're
No,
trying to, we're
no.
trying to stay at, we're trying
Right.
to look
Yeah.
palatable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
But
there's-
if 45 days is good and we get a complete application, does that give local labor a fair shake to get a certification that,
Yeah, I think, yeah, with the 3 weeks, we can make stuff happen and.
then why don't we stick
just-
with,
Just to have the conversation, because I take it, and the other business managers will take this to this next level. This happened over here. Cisco used Carrier. This happened, we had somebody come in. Well, my due diligence is, I'm adding this and I'm gonna put a class in. I'll call the vendor up. I'll say, listen, we lost 500 hours for a project over here. I could get those 500 hours if I train my folks. But at least I know what to train to
Yeah.
and how to train.
yeah,
And it's just not one project specific. This is, what do we need to do to put our wall up around Rochester and Monroe County to say we have qualified people?
absolutely.
Because I'm very proactive myself on doing this, and I think for me, when I have to go back, and I get beat up pretty good, if I could go, no, I called you on this, you were given an opportunity, you didn't make it happen, but I'm not telling you not to make it happen. Still follow through with that training and that certificate for the next one.
That's it.
Because we could have had 3 epoxy floors after that first one.
Right.
Yeah,
Right? That's where I think,
absolutely.
and I don't want to do I would like to see the 45 days on the application and the vote day, and everybody agrees on the waiver. But if they change and they say, nope, I got something, I think maybe it's consideration to extend that 45 days. But I don't think it's good to change it right now, but
So
you know.
you're
it's-
saying if we get into a waiver, you want to have the flexibility to extend the period of time if we need it?
Right. If an applicant wants to drag their feet, which
Well,
Brian
if they
sees.
drag their feet, we're
Yeah.
not starting the clock.
Well,
Because
that-
we have everything
that's
we
the
need.
ticket.
So
So
if-
So it's gonna become 60
as long as the
days.
application's complete, so if Robin says, hey, I've got everything, then the clock starts.
Yeah.
If not, then the whole thing gets too muddy with timing. So I think that's the key. You know when you have everything, and then you say, okay, now start the time. That's the way to do it.
So in the past, Joe, this one epoxy floor was done on a Sunday. And when Kevin went back to the site, he was like, what's going on, you know? And that started this whole thing. And that's what we're trying to avoid is because at the end of the day, Jay, there was no teeth. We have no teeth to,
This is OFD Foods.
Well, that's,
No, I
that's,
can't, there was one other one that, it
It
came out,
happens,
it
like, on
happened.
occasion where
Yeah.
we don't learn about the local labor violation until there's nothing we can
Yeah,
do.
spilled
Like,
milk
the work
and-
is done, like, there's nothing we
Yeah,
can do.
and there was nothing, there was no, it was like, okay.
I think that's a fair point, but, so, you know. like
And
in-
something to consider, like,
Yeah,
as
and
a
enforce it.
separate.
But coming back, I think we can handle the delay tactic, if it is indeed a tactic, by saying the 45 days doesn't start until it's complete. And I think we should make that clear
Mm-hmm.
to people that, and Brian, you can do that, like, hey, before I will even entertain the waiver, make sure that it has all of this information. So, you know, you may want to plan further out than 45 days. So that, and we can revisit it if we feel like, okay, we need a little more time to address it, but let's stick with the 45.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's
And,
fair.
and, you know,
think
if
that's-
that gives,
Gives you enough time.
Are we maintaining a record of these instances where there've been violations that we only discover after the fact? I'm wondering, is there some, like, roster of case studies that we can refer to? I think that would be helpful.
Not yet.
roster of bad players.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
just so
like
that we can
the-
say,
so-
this happened at
Oh, no,
this
it's a
date, this
great
happened at this
point.
date, this happened at this date.
It's a great idea.
Wow, this can help inform, what the problem is, and we can.
And
go
you're
out-
getting at a good point, because we don't want to make policy around like one project where things went off
course
the
not,
rails.
right.
Right, so we write a memo now when there's a local
Yeah.
labor violation, so we do document it in a more organized fashion now.
Just
We can
have-
talk to Kevin.
So,
Well, I just, taking the information that we're collecting, the
Yeah,
the
ma-
memos.
And using it to inform our decision.
Yeah, and perhaps distilling some the higher level insights from all, like, that stack of memos. Like a bulleted list of, here are the instances where there've been violations that we discovered after they already took place. And here is the scope of work associated with each instance, project, site, name, and date. It might just be helpful to inform this ongoing.
I don't know, I think it would
discussion.
absolutely be, are there patterns? Right now, it's all anecdotal.
It's all anecdotal.
And the
100%.
reality is, like, we're, of course, we have to focus on where things went wrong to make policy, but the vast majority of the time, all of this works very well. But we, of course, have to, that's not a reason to sit
Rachel,
on our
absolutely.
laurels and be
I mean,
like,
all
oh,
of this is
everything's fine.
continuous improvement. And-
Yeah,
And I love the
absolutely. I get
fact
it.
that we're having this dialogue,
Yeah.
but I think Anna's got a great point. Let's,
Yeah.
It's
And so-
measuring performance, and
Yeah.
it is, I know you're saying, Robin, that like, oh, we already do that, but this is, I'm essentially saying we are kind of I'm proposing that we do create a little bit more work for ourselves, you
yeah,
know, to
yeah.
dig a little bit further and produce another
And
document.
we're
that we
doing
can
a lot
refer
of
to.
that with the way that the exemptions are coming in now. It's all computerized and electronic and it's very organized. But anyway, so back to the 45 days. We put that in because we were having a lot of instances where people were coming to us at the 11th hour and saying, we need this done like now. I've got them coming tomorrow. And we're like, no, that's not going to work. So we built it in for ourselves. It's, the 45 days is now becoming something more. It's
Yeah.
becoming time for us to do diligence, to enforce our policy in a more stringent way. And so that's fine. We're learning from the 45 days.
I believe in the spirit, the 45 days was all about that.
It was, and now we're getting more. And so I think
Now
a
we can
couple
say-
things need to happen. I think we need to revisit the questions that Anne is asking during the meeting. And are they, sometimes we start asking questions and we're just like, okay, they answered them and away we go. Like, I think we have to maybe look at that, see if there's a better way to ask, to get at what we're trying to do, and then make it more clear what starts the 45-day clock and communicate that to applicants.
What about
Yeah.
the change when Ann asks the questions and they say, no, we don't expect any outside labor? And then all of a sudden it happens. Is there a clock for that, or does the question get answered differently like you're talking about?
I think,
Right.
I think what you do is when Ann asks the question, do you anticipate any now? Well, if you do, because to your point, Troy, you said to me, like, I'll do projects, curveballs happen, right? In the middle of a project, I'll get a phone call and go, hey, the city came in, or the town, and they want you to do this. Okay, well, where do I get that? And the next thing you know, well, I gotta get it out of Buffalo. Okay, well, you know, and I had no idea when I started, and that happens, right? So I think maybe we say that to them. You know, do you anticipate any now? Okay, in the future, if you do, here's the story.
Yeah.
So you're telling them that.
You're
And then-
telling them right up, you're telling them right up
Yeah.
front what your expectations are, and
But that's what we do right now.
We
It's
do.
like-
I mean,
like, do you
and
anticipate
staff-
any
yeah.
labor exemptions? The answer is usually no. If you do, you know they need to be 45 days in
so
advance.
maybe,
That's it.
so
Yeah.
maybe it's not if you do, if you don't expect any now, but you know that they'll be coming, you know, maybe we change that verbiage.
Yeah. and
Yeah, that's all
so-
I'm suggesting.
Yeah, right.
Is
I
being a
agree.
little more clear to the applicants that if you do, please understand the agency staff needs 45 days to perform diligence in order to process a waiver request. We can work with that. I
and
mean,
Yeah.
but the end of the day is people,
Once
we
the
tell them at
application,
application.
Of course you do.
You
They're
know,
gonna
so
do
it's-
what they wanna do anyway.
Right.
but the real key is once the application is complete.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's something,
Yeah.
I don't know that we want to do in a meeting, but as part of the application, is if you do have a local labor, recognize many times, the first time you give us an application, items are missing. So the 45 days starts once it's complete, so please plan on that.
trying to think how we can.
It's hard,
The challenge is that everything that you do at this meeting, this initial meeting, is with the applicant. And so frequently they don't, that information doesn't work its way down to the GCs.
Right.
Half the time the GCs are the ones who are filling out the.
I agree with
exemption.
that, I agree with
So,
that.
you know, and that's, no matter what you say, I hate to say it.
Right.
No matter what you say at that meeting to the applicant.
Yeah.
Frequently, it never, I mean, it doesn't
Right, and
go
that's
anywhere
my-
after
yeah.
that.
Right, and for example, the violations that we did have, we were reaching out to the applicant's like, oh my God, I have no idea,
Yeah.
I'm on
Well,
this,
that's-
I'm dealing with it,
Yeah.
you know.
I was just gonna say
Yeah.
that the couple people that I talked to that had an issue with, they had no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't even know what was going on.
Right.
So,
Right, but should it be like that?
Well, I-
Should-
you know-
shouldn't they,
well, let me say this
No,
to
no,
you.
I mean,
No matter
you
what
give
we
it to
do,
the contractor, and
no matter what we do here, to Troy's point, if there's no teeth in it,
the applicant?
this is just a waste of
It's a
time.
joke, yeah.
It's
I
a
would
waste
agree
of
with
time.
I would agree with
So,
that. Joe,
if
but-
Rachel, if you could draft it so that there's a consequence. So, look, here's the rules, right? Unless it's proprietary and nobody locally can install it, the manufacturer installs it, then we're gonna give you a pass, but other than that, you have to exhaust locally, and if you don't, here's the consequence. And if that consequence is not monetary, you might as well not have it at all.
Right, it's lip service.
It's just, we're just wasting our time.
Agree
We don't want that
100%.
word consequence, do we?
I think the consequence should be the value of that
Of the
Li-
incentives they're receiving, it's a
is
two-way street.
diminished. If there was, on the tanks, if there's, they got, a total sales tax benefit on $20 million, that tank is $1 million, they lose that incentive on that $1 million. That's what I would recommend.
So what we do is the board, as you guys know, we approve a certain amount of sales tax exemption that they are able to use up to, so it's, whatever the case may be. There's, and that number exists in our resolution, in our project agreement, on the forms that are filed with New York State, and then every form that the project operators distribute to their contractors who are making purchases. So it's, hundreds of pieces of paper potentially with that number on it. And this would be a significant slowdown to the project because we would be amending and reissuing
Is it
all
easier
of
just
that
to put a
paperwork.
fine?
That's what I was
That
thinking.
or suspend benefits.
I was
would
thinking
be easier.
suspend benefits, you just suspend them.
So could.
This
could-
way, it's not, like, you're not complicating it, there's not formula, there's not a ton of paperwork.
I'm good, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever's easy.
You
Either-
break the rules, we're gonna suspend benefits, period. And that will get people's attention. I know it would get my attention. If you suspended all my benefits that I just got approved, I'm gonna go to my GC and go, what the hell are you doing?
You know what, in the questions that Ann asks, why couldn't we ask the applicant, have you talked with the GC? Do you know what the answers are to these questions, or are you just saying, in their
Well-
mind, they don't know?
But I think, to Brian's point, I think when the applicant comes in, that goes down the road after, you know what I mean? And I still, no matter what we say here, I still think it's gonna get lost as a project and months go on. So I think you put in writing about, so just like we're on task here, we put in writing to exhaust that you have to do it locally, and here's how you can avoid that, right, unless the manufacturer does it, right? And then I think, and if you don't, everything gets suspended. This way, it's not a ton of paperwork, it's just, there it is. And I think you gotta be careful with fines too, because I think that can get muddy. So,
You tell us what's easier. It's,
That's a weird, just
Well,
trying to figure out, 'cause it
that's
still
what
is a
we
ton
have
of
to think
paperwork.
about. The paperwork, so the forms are out there, right? The sales tax forms are in the universe. That's really the only benefit we can suspend. Like a pilot agreement, the mechanics are too,
but,
you couldn't do
but
it.
sales tax you could. or
Sales
any-
tax you
You
could.
could, and property tax you can.
Property tax gets,
Because that doesn't go until it's done.
it goes until, so what, the issue with the property tax is we literally remove the property from the taxable roll and we put it on a tax exempt roll.
But doesn't
So
it happen until the end?
No, it's while the property tax abatement is,
So it happens
Correct.
at the outset.
so we take the property, we tell the assessor, move that property from roll section 9 and move it to roll section 8 and send a pilot bill. You can't send a regular tax bill. If we unwound that, if we suspended it, it would be telling the assessor to move the property back
Back.
to the taxable roll, and then we couldn't put it back on the tax exempt roll until the next available March 1st.
can we fine them?
Which then, what's that?
Can we fine them?
We can find them, sure. It would go into the IDA's operating account. I mean,
Let's
that's,
do that.
But then
If
is
that's
that less
easier,
paperwork?
if that's less
But-
paperwork.
it's far
yeah.
less paperwork.
Then
Well,
let's
then
do
let's
that.
do that.
What's an appropriate dollar figure?
I think it's
What
gotta
would
be a
that bring on
percentage.
litigation?
Percentage,
So
okay.
in other words,
Oh,
if you
sure,
come in,
yeah.
if you come in
So
with a
it-
$10 million project,
So is it,
and
are
you
you
say to
saving
me,
any money?
my fine's
If
10
there's
points.
litigation involved from,
So-
because of,
Well,
or they're gonna
that-
fight
I
it.
would say, yeah, do one.
$10,000.
No,
or
that'd be
I think
$100
it's
grand.
I'm
$100
asking
grand.
They
the
would-
right
But if I came in with a
Wow.
$100,000 project, and you said,
Yes,
let's say you said
then you've got the idea
10,000 across the
pending
board.
Mm-hmm.
The guy with the $10 million project, he's gonna pay the
He's
10
gonna
grand,
laugh,
pay the
right.
local labor guy and.
Amazon, right,
Right,
yeah.
and he'll be done with it.
Yeah.
But if you put a percentage on it, then I think you keep it fair and consistent.
Right.
So that the teeth are in it for everybody at every price point you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Joe, I like that. Do it like
Yeah.
25,000 or 10% of benefits, whichever is greater.
It could go
Exactly.
into our workforce development fund
Yeah.
ultimately too. There could be
Are
some
you saying
hook to
the
that.
fine is on the total project cost or on the value of the exemption?
The value of the exemption.
That's a challenge.
That's, yeah.
Or the total project
The
cost.
life
That's
of the
what I was saying.
project
To verify.
verifying.
I would think the total project
Project
cost.
cost then.
So if the project's,
That's how our fees are based, is
right,
project
exactly.
cost, so.
So let's say the project, Robin, is $10 million, and we say, okay, it's 10 points,
Right?
right? That's $1 million. If somebody comes in with a $100,000 project, it's 10 grand. If somebody's got $1 million project, it's $100,000. But, so at least it's got teeth in it, and it's gonna get people's attention, and they're not gonna dust you off when you say, hey, you gotta show me this. They're not gonna not get back to you, because I know if it was me and I was a
So-
developer, I'd be
so-
going, wait a minute here. You're
So
gonna do
when
what he
would
tells
the
you to
penalty
do.
apply? Like any local labor violation? I mean,
Upon the violation. So.
and then do
I-
they get, I mean, is this a strike system or is this like,
And what type of violation, like?
right, what
Like
type of
Kevin,
violation?
Kevin tells you what the violations are, and like, Kevin will be like, oh my god, I had a rough week, and I look at it, he's like, well, he didn't have his ID on him, but he had it the next day, I'm like, is that a
That's
violation?
not.
No, you
So,
can't.
no, I'm not, I think we're talking about this right here.
Like intentional,
It's the
Local
20
Yeah.
cars,
Intentional
it's the
violation
20
of our
cars
federal
running like
yeah.
rats when somebody
Right.
pulls up and they're from
Right.
Florida, Louisiana,
Yeah.
Texas, North
Right.
Carolina, and
Right.
Yeah,
Arizona.
and
So let's start off with this, and then we
Which
can,
I have
we
photographs
can
of that.
start to put more teeth into it. But I would say, for these, if you go ahead and bring in outside labor without getting an exemption from the board, there's a fine. And I would make it 25,000 or 10% of the
Project cost.
project cost, whatever is greater. Okay? And that is if you go through and you basically bring in outside labor without getting an exemption.
yep.
That's pretty cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start to, at least we've got a stake in the ground and we can add to it.
Right.
Is there how do you adjudicate if somebody brings in one person who's outside the
Yeah.
local labor knowingly, or somebody brings in a whole crew? Right, like, is it the same discipline? I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, like, you guys are creating a lot of issues
Right.
trying to.
And I think that we're onto something. I think that, and I think Brian's pointing out a caution. I think the other caution to point out is not only are we raising the stakes for people who violate our policy, we're raising the stakes for us. So if we assess a penalty and we have done anything, we missed the local labor exemption, we went beyond the 45 days because of our own, if there's anything that they can point to, right, that we've done
Yeah,
something.
then we step in it.
Then we're stepping in it, and we've got it.
I think we should be okay with that. If
We have to, I'm just
if
bringing
we
it up
don't
so you
hold up our end of the
understand
bargain,
that
I mean,
if
there
we're
is.
ready to assess penalties, we're also ready to be exposed to potential litigation.
I think
So-
there's one thing you gotta add to it. I think you gotta
I'm
give.
sorry, folks, I have to drop. I think the conversation that's going on is really very good. And adding specificity, as Jay had mentioned early in the call, and then others have talked about putting some teeth behind our policies. I think it's all good, but I think we need to draft
Thank you.
draft where we are with that, and then have a chance for us all to take a look at it. I'm sorry I can't stay on the call because I think the conversation is real great.
No, and,
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
no, I think that's,
Okay,
so,
all right.
Wait,
if,
just let me finish what I was about to say. Rachel, what about time to cure?
What about what?
Time to cure. So let's say,
Oh, yeah, I mean,
right, so let's say,
You get warned and then you get.
right, you're the developer, and Brian goes there and says, okay, here it is. And now you know what the penalty is. Do you provide time to cure?
generally, I wouldn't recommend not giving people time to
That's
cure.
where my
But-
head was at.
But when you've got the instance where somebody, as Troy is outlined for us, they've done something, the work is done, the only thing we can do is assess a penalty. Like, there's no cure. The installations happen. That's different. When
Right.
there's an opportunity to cure,
But if
I
it's in
think
the
we
middle
should
of the
always
project,
provide that.
if it's in the
Yeah.
middle of the project and Brian sees something, and you give him, okay, we're gonna give you 10 days to cure. And upon those 10 days, when you go back, if it's not right, you're ponying up to 25 grand or 10%. That's it.
No, I like that. What I'd like to do is, because I think it's fantastic,
Yeah.
but I wanna try and get some stuff moved forward as well. So,
But one thing to be cautious of.
sure,
When, Brian, you hit it, when there's a one person, okay, I'll use AJ Glass. AJ Glass was awarded, the project. They couldn't man the project with local labor because their crews were dispersed, but they were able to bring somebody that was 3 miles over our border. That's gonna flag as being a violation. So there are some contractors in different trades that their counties associated with Monroe County go further and their wings spread farther. And the contractor, like AJ, I think was like, I don't care about this violation. I got this project. I'm a union contractor and screw you. I have my agreement, my collective bargaining agreement that has these areas. So we gotta be cognizant of that time, because we're living one right now at Plug Power. Plug Power had a relationship severed here locally, and they succeeded in a project in Albany. They have a relationship with those two contractors in Albany. They wanted to bring them in. They worked with us awesome. This was like how to handle it the right way. But it gave me a chance to go back to those business managers to write a letter to waiver themselves that this is a member inside of that union. So I wanna, that's why.
Yeah.
no, it's a
I
great
also
point,
wanna
Troy.
consider that, that we talked about this, the level.
These are gonna be narrow, I see this, the penalties applying to narrow instances of like egregious and intentional
I agree.
violations
I
of our
totally agree.
policy. Not, we're accommodating union relationships and, like, yeah, this is, and it doesn't happen that often, thankfully.
Right,
No,
thankfully.
but the
But it
idea,
gets people's
it should be a
attention.
deterrent.
Yeah, it'll be a deterrent,
So,
absolutely.
so what I'd like to do, though, is, I think we had two things, is we talked about modifying the policy. And I think what I heard is we've come to an agreement that we want to have more specificity on, from the warranty and the specialized labor. That, and if we can capture that in a modification of the local labor policy. I think we want to have teeth around it, and I think we have some good ideas on that, but I think we need to think that through a little more. We can table that one, but we can at least get the wording, I think, around what we want to do.
Okay, we know what we need to do with the
Yeah.
existing language, and we
And-
know
and-
we need to start thinking about a penalty addition.
Right, so then,
Right.
what I'm hopeful for is if we can have one more governance meeting to review the changes to the local labor
Yep,
policy,
yep.
so we can present them to the board, even if we don't have the teeth part worked
Yeah,
out
that
yet.
that's gotta
That we
come
can,
later.
we can come back later, but I'd at least like to get something in front, something to show for the meetings we've had.
Yes.
Would you like that to take place at the meeting on the 28th, or at
If-
the following?
If we can do it on the 28th and having a governance meeting either before or after, I think that would be,
We're also scheduling a finance committee
Yeah,
meeting on the
finance.
28th.
if it's convenient, Robin, it would be great if we
You
can.
don't mind sitting here for 2.5 hours?
There's nothing more than I like.
This is actually one of my fun rooms.
Yeah, but if we could do that prior, then it would be great to have the approval of the governance committee beforehand. And then,
And that would probably be short.
yeah,
Right.
Just looking for a vote.
yeah, I mean, if we can get the modification to this group beforehand for comments, I think it can be a relatively short meeting just to approve the language. And,
Okay, I agree. Can I plant one more seed with this committee before we call it quits?
just one more.
I was informed Monday of Ly Cycle's bidding and how it's going out onto the street. Industrial info is another resource that Li-Cycle is using to get bidders. Those bid documents are real. They are like a real job.
It's a solid bid.
It's a solid bid document.
Designed to get-
So we're not,
It's
we're
not
being
apples to
played,
apples with
we're
plan
being
room.
played with the plan room. So let's, I want to plant that seed that,
And just for full disclosure, Troy and I are meeting with Matt Squires from Manning, just to get his perspective on this, because to Troy's point, when anyone puts out bid documents, you put them out in a way that encourages as many people as possible to bid. That's how you get the best price.
Yeah, you don't discourage people.
Well,
You
well,
don't
Joe,
do that.
that's it. If you put it out
Right.
and you're getting no bids, when we do that as designers, it's a failure on us.
100%.
And so,
So industrial info is another housing place for bids, and what is being said is that one bid package is going on industrial info and one bid package is
it might be the
different.
same, the verbiage is, the Builders Exchange, we're getting this. Industrial info, they're giving us this.
Okay.
Is there
And
any way
it's-
that we can compare and contrast those, so can we draw from specific examples so that we can bring this
Oh, sure.
into our dialogue with Li-Cycle? Okay.
Sure. So one of the business managers, who's 60% of the project, is the electrician. He's like, my contractor made me aware that industrial info has the bid documents and they're legit.
Okay.
Where the Builders Exchange, people are struggling and they're picking up the phone, they're asking the questions, and they're not getting the answers.
Because we need to have eyeballs then on
Right.
where there are differences, and Brian needs to know that, and
What would be the motivation for that? Like, what would be like?
Well, so they fired,
Mastech.
Mastech's, we got another replacement representative in town. So this, I think, is number 4 or number 5 since the project started. So there's real no flow. It's been like, pulling teeth and they're exploding and you go in there and spend time cleaning them up and then another one. And it just seems to be a pattern that's, it's Mastech, really.
Right.
Li-Cycle, I think, is upset at Mastech more than.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, we
understood that
pick
too.
up on
They
that.
paid-
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
absolutely.
think Li-Cycle's had just about enough
And
of
Yeah.
just to note, because we do talk to them, we see who their things are, most things are being awarded local.
Yes,
They are.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I
for
think.
sure.
It took them a little learning curve.
We
Yeah.
had some issues over the summer, no.
Yeah.
They're learning curve now, and they're seeing the quality, again,
And
they're
they're
seeing.
also
what we
very
do.
honest, like Robin will frequently bring up on calls, like, this is what we're hearing, and this doesn't help the narrative in the
Right.
community.
Mhm.
And they're very receptive usually. And this is the kind of thing I would say that this is what we're hearing, we need you to
Yeah.
correct this.
Exactly.
What we're not doing is getting into the accuracy of the accusation. We're just saying, you
We're
guys
saying,
need to
this is
deal
what's
with
on
it.
the street, here you go.
Fix it.
Fix it.
And then they do.
Yeah.
And I think we would start by doing the same thing here. Like, we become aware of this, we need you to fix this, we need you to make this go away.
And I
it's
and I
every 2
think
weeks
a lot
that
of
we
what you
meet
saw
them
last
on
summer,
Wednesdays
Yeah.
at 2
I'm seeing those labor issues work themselves out,
Yeah.
at least
They are
Yeah.
for
I
us.
think people were just making bad decisions
Yeah.
over the
Yeah,
summer.
and I can
under
tell,
duress.
like, for example,
Yeah.
we just put an ad in to hire a painter. If we would've put that same ad in the spring,
Yeah.
we might've got like 2 or 3 resumes.
Right.
We just
Now-
ran that ad, now I got like 18.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's,
Things are opening up.
yeah, things are changing. You know, that money that was
Right.
handed out's drying up and,
Right.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
you know, money that shouldn't have been in the system is
Yeah,
going away.
yeah.
So,
One last parting shot, and I think we talked about this before folks arrived, is that I think we have to try to change the narrative a little bit relative, and when I talk about this, it's more so the specialized construction. Like, we have to put the onus on them to plead their case to us of why this is specialized, right? Because
yes.
and that's where I was going with my third point, that's what I was trying to say, is if there is a piece of equipment, just show us why you can't buy, if you're buying Carrier, but you can put a York in, and you can buy the York locally, just tell me why.
Joe, actually, I think it's a little different. If they're coming in and saying this is specialized, It's, what is the certification? Like, you know, we use it's probably a poor example, but it's the only one that's in my head right now, is that tank where they came in and said, we need to have our folks come in and bolt this tank.
Sure.
Is that because they have certification from the American Bolting Society?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, that's all I wanna know. If it's specialized because they've got C1 certification from the American Bolting Society, that's what we wanna know.
Yeah,
And that's it.
And you
That's-
mentioned the epoxy floor thing to me. So Jay, I've had epoxy floors done that people from out of town came, a General Motors rep, I own a building, there's a dealership in it. General Motors rep sent the guy in, he was from Michigan. The floor cracked and peeled, it looked terrible. I had epoxy floor that a guy did that is local. That epoxy floor, you could drive a bulldozer over it and not have an issue with it. So that's where I was going with it. If there's a reason that I have to do this, okay, fine, I get it.
Yeah.
Just show us that reason.
That's
But
it.
if you
That's
can
all we're
buy-
asking.
That's it, but if you can buy like kind here and have somebody locally install it, then it
I
just
just
makes
don't want to-
everybody's life easier.
It's just not our place to get into that conversation with the applicant.
Yeah, because I recommend an Aon air handler, not Carrier.
Yeah.
York.
Yeah, no, you don't wanna do that.
I think it's far too many times somebody's just coming in and saying, we don't have anybody in Rochester who does this, therefore it's specialized.
Yeah, and that's where we,
And that's
that's
probably-
where.
that's
So
an easy
why
out.
If you put the onus on them, make them provide you something in writing.
Just show us why.
That's
Yes.
exactly right. I mean,
Yeah,
I'll give you
spot
an
on.
example. When we go and we look at a bridge that's being painted, the DOT now requires those folks have certification. And there's two societies that they point out, they want the certification and what certification they want. And someone could have done this for 30 years and have oodles of experience, they now need to be certified. And so it's very simple. That's all we're asking for. So, with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
A motion?
I will second.
Robin, just so
And
you
there's
know,
no one left
I'm
to
late for my
object.
1:30, okay?